I'd like to pick up the pace just a little bit and talk about paintings as we view them as a slideshow. Of course, we'll start with the inimitable Paul Felix. This is a cold light painting, and what I love about this is it's so exaggerated. He's pushed the temperatures into like a caricatured realm. And the other thing I love is he's also using basically just two values per object. Either it's average light or average shadow. And of course, the average light is going to get a cooler color temperature than the average shadow because it's a cold light painting. For example, look at the straw huts, the rooftops. Where the light is, it's this purpley color, and then where the shadow is, it's this more warm orangey color. Okay, it's the same kind of local color, but two completely different temperatures of it. Look at the wall. The top face of the wall is this clearly blue color, fairly saturated even. Then by contrast, the shadow is this warmer purple color that's still in like the blue family, but it's closer to the red side of blue. Okay, textbook stuff. Look at the grass. The top where the grass is getting the most light is this cold bluish grass. Then on the bottom where the grass is more in shadow, it's getting a warmer green. And of course, Paul Felix has added his own personal magic by pushing these colors to their extremes in order to get a nice, fun, cartoony, caricatured look. Perfect for a Disney show. Here's a painting with great color impact by Raphael Lacoste. This one is interesting because it really only has two colors. It's got that really punchy, saturated golden orange, which is clearly the most saturated color in the painting. There's also an offshoot of that, which is a cooler violet version of red. And then on the cool side, in the shadows, every color is variations on a single blue. But that blue does not ever reach the level of saturation that the orange does. Conversely, where the orange is used, it's almost always used in its fullest saturation. So that play between heavily saturated warm orange and different varieties of that cool blue create a very nice color harmony. And color harmony might be a bit of a scary term, so let's define it. It's actually very simple. Color harmony is a term that simply refers to color temperatures being appropriately used in the context of the palette. And color harmony actually happens automatically as long as you adhere to the principles of warm versus cool we've been discussing this week. This concept painting from Tangled is very similar to the Raphael Lacoste painting we just looked at. The warm colors are that big area of purple in the sky, and then the smaller shapes of yellow and red for the lanterns. And those warms work against that one blue color that occupies the entire rest of the painting. Of course, there are different values and different grays of that blue. There's a piece of complexity that I really like in this painting, and it's where the town structure is in the background. You notice as it reaches upward, that blue becomes more red. It becomes more suffused with warmth. That's a nice little trick that reminds me of when I was painting that Christensen demo. Remember at the end where I took that purple shadow and started warming it up? That's what's happening here. It's a big blue shape that is made more interesting by a fairly dramatic warming of the cools. Okay, but it's not warming it so much that it competes with the actual warms in the light. This color key by Ian Gooding for Tarzan achieves its color harmony very simply as well. Obviously there's a warm light spotlighting Tarzan, but in the background it's entirely a cool palette made of a range of blue grays. You can see those three swatches at the top are all a variety of those blue grays. Now the water is a different local color. It's kind of this greenish water. So in shadow, that water is going to err on the bluer side of green. And of course, he's kept it gray as well, kind of like doubly cool. Not only is it bluish green, it's also grayed down. Of course, this leaves tons of room for warms in the light. Look at Tarzan's skin. It's this really hot orange in comparison to those blue grays and green blues. And then the water in light is simply a warmer green, a green that errs more on the yellow side of green. Now I'm zooming in on this to see a little bit of fancy reflected light. Look at Tarzan in shadow. You see where the colors turn very red? That's just a nice bit of reflected light that works off the otherwise kind of cooler green shadows that you can see there and just gives it this flare of red. But you'll notice though that that red is still on the kind of cooler side of red. It's not the same yellow as the light skin. It's kind of dipping toward the cools. Yet it's still admittedly a very hot red to be seen in that cool shadow. Now, Ian Gooding has certainly done this for effect. You'll notice he's only done this on Tarzan. He hasn't done any of the background that way. And that's just simply to highlight the character. It's an artistic choice. Manipulating colors in the shadows is actually a very common technique. Here's a great figure painting by Xiaoming Wu. And look at those shadows. They radiate with tons of different colors, right? And by comparison, the light family is kind of plain. It does not have that same kind of play. Now, Xiaoming Wu has an interesting theory behind his color use. He says that light is where the drawing is, and shadow is where the color is. Now, let me explain what he means by that. If you recall back to this demonstration, remember how I was talking about reflected light as getting colors from all different kinds of objects? Well, that's what Xiaoming Wu is referring to. In the shadows, you have reflected light, and you can get colors from anywhere. You can get colors from the floor, the ceiling, the sky, other objects. There are so many areas for color to come from in shadow because of bounced and reflected light. Whereas in light, the light color only comes from one source, the bully. That's it. So in light, you can actually keep your thinking very simple. It's like that bully color is influencing everything in light, which means there aren't many opportunities for diversity. Then in shadow, you have the opportunity to open up and let so many colors come into your objects via reflected light. Here's one of my own paintings, and you'll see I use exactly that kind of thinking. Look at where the light is. These areas are in light, and it's a warm orangey, almost reddish light. So the colors in light actually become very predictable. They're all being pulled towards that red, the bully. And you can clearly see it. Look at the green fur on the monster. It's like yellowish, even orangish, because that red is pulling that green so strongly towards the red. The girl's dress and hair are being brought together in light by that warm red as well. Can you see that? They're very close in color. But then in shadows is where this picture really opens up and the color becomes very unpredictable. I'm getting reflected light from the water and it's ranging from blues to purples to cooler greens. His cooler pinkish red cheeks help to offset that area of cool for what I think adds a little bit of balance. There is blue reflected light coming from the sky, hitting the left side of the girl's face and hair. You see, there's so many options in shadow for color generation that you can really just have fun. And again, this is where there's no right and wrong color. You do whatever you feel you need to do for variety. And it doesn't even really have to be believable. Like the light in this painting is otherworldly because I've pushed it there. I've taken what is in the real world and just kind of caricatured it. So in this case, in my cooler shadows, I know that I should be within a realm of cool color. Like I can't just go adding warm oranges and reds in the shadow because it would compete with the warms in the light. So as long as I'm in the relative area of cool color temperatures, I'll be okay. Now, by comparison, this painting by Scott Christensen is more indicative of how color actually looks in real life. The sun is lighting the scene, and the sun is still a bully, but you'll notice it's not the caricatured, orangey, whimsical sunlight that I painted in my painting. This light is much more subdued. The sun is still bullying the colors in light to be warm, but you'll notice there are a lot more grays being used, and this is typical of nature. Nature works on gray. I mean, step outside right now, take a look at what's in light, and let me know if you see any super saturated colors. You probably won't. What you will see, though, is a strong comparison of warm versus cool, and that's what this painting has. If we compare this now to the shadow colors, look how clearly they separate themselves in terms of color temperature. The left swatch of shadow is clearly cooler than the right swatch of lights. Now look at the bottom of that shadow swatch. Those are getting into warmer cools. They're used as reflected light. That is, light bouncing from the rock or bouncing from the grass and bouncing up into the rocks that are in shadow. They add just a little bit of relief to otherwise a very blue area. Here's another Paul Felix painting, and I want to specifically address snow. Snow is very telling because it has no local color of its own. It's just white, and you can actually apply what I'm about to say to any white object. When an object has no local color, it gets all of its color from either the light or the shadow. So if you look at the snow in this case, any snow in light is tinted yellow because it's bullied by the sun, and the snow in shadow gets so much blue from the environment. Here's a similar painting by a Dutch painter named Peter Mork Monstead. Look at the snow in this one. The snow is not only getting blue light from the sky, but it's getting reflected light from the trees. And you'll notice that the snow is not just cooler blue like it was in the Paul Felix painting. It has intricate touches of warmer blues, grayed down oranges, grayed down greens. It's a symphony of grays in there that really helps this painting pop and be very realistic. And to offset that complexity, look at the snow in light. It's very simple. It's essentially one color, one value in light. Very predictable. So this ties back to Xiaoming Wu's theory of how in the light you play with just drawing, and in the shadows that's where the color is.